sometimes when people eat new foods like alligator or crocodile or shark, whatever exotic foods people eat, say, what did it taste like? Well, it kind of tasted like chicken. But not every new food that we eat tastes like chicken. In 2011, I went with Raymond Burkholder to and Stephen Burkholder to Myanmar, and we were going to go down to the first of all to the Irrawaddy Delta in Myanmar, which is a river delta where the river comes out into the ocean. And there's a number of islands down there. We were going to one of the islands down there, and we were going to be having a conference there. So we flew into Yangon and stayed there overnight at a hotel, and then the next day we got a bus. In the evening, the next day, we got a bus, the overnight bus, to go down to Laputa, which was on the coast or close to the coast, and then from there we would get a boat to go out to the island. Well, we got on the bus, and the bus was an older bus. We counted if there would be two people in each seat, there were would have been room for 48 people. So, but when the bus was full, when they left, we counted there were 73 people on the bus. There were two or three people in each seat, bench seat, plus they put a wooden bench down the aisle in the middle, and people sat on that. And there were people standing in the front, between the front seats and the windshield. So we drove, and we asked them, like, how long is the bus ride? They said, oh, it's about 7 hours, 8 hours. So we started going, and then after an hour or so, the bus driver stopped and got out, and we kind of looked out the window to see what he was doing, and he had a lug wrench and a big pipe, and he was tightening the lugs on the wheels. And then he got back in, and we went some more, and there was then we got to a rest stop, and we got out and had some ate some food, went to the washroom, and then after some time the driver said, okay, he's ready to go, and so people got back on the bus. The bus was so full that when the driver came, rather than coming in the door on the right side of the bus where people got onto the bus, he crawled in the window on the driver's side, because that was easier than getting everybody off the bus that was standing between the front seats and the windshield, so we get to the driver's seat. So we left. We drove another couple of hours, and then they stopped and they said, now the road's not so good, and the bus can't go. So I said, okay, now what do we do? They said, well, we'll wait, and there's a truck that comes, and then we'll get on the truck and we'll ride the truck for about an hour, and then we'll get another bus. So there we are. It's about midnight. We're sitting beside the road. It took all our luggage, everything off the bus, and we're waiting. And an hour or so later, the truck came, and it was a straight truck with kind of a canopy on the back, and so they put all the luggage up on top and put people in the back of the truck, and then Raymond and I were the old guys, so we got to sit up front with the driver, which was nice. And then we started driving, and Stephen was on the back. And after a while, Stephen was banging on the cab of the truck, and we stopped, and he was saying something's dripping down, and his back is burning. So the driver stopped, and we checked, and here there were some containers of Clorox or bleach up on top, and one of them was leaking, and it was dripping down Stephen's back. Oh, there were rice paddies there, so we went out in the field. Now it's like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. We're out in the rice paddies, splashing water on Stephen's back to wash the Clorox off of his back and wash out his shirt. And we got back in, and we went, and we got to where the road got a little better, and so we got off the truck, and now it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and we're waiting for another bus to come. We're standing beside the road, and we saw a light coming down the road. It was kind of waving and swerving. And what is that? Is it a bicycle? But the light was too high for that. And then we kept watching, and after a while, this shape came out of the dark, and it was a bus. It had no lights, and there was somebody leaning out the door on the right side with a real big flashlight, kind of shining the flashlight in front of the bus so the bus could see where to go. We're like, we want that bus, but we didn't get that bus. We got on another bus, and then we asked, like, how far is it from here to Laputa? Well, it was still 5 hours. So we got on this other bus. The next bus um, was in worse shape than the first bus we had. For some reason, it didn't shift right, and the driver had a hard time shifting gears. It would just grind, and but eventually he'd get it in gear. And if he wanted to back up, if he wanted to go in reverse, his helper had to climb back over everybody in the bus and come to the back and open up the floor and reach down and pull something, and then the bus would go in reverse. We could go back. One thing that worked in both of those buses was that there was a flat screen uh, video monitor screen in the front of the bus, mounted up front, and they played Myanmar uh, love song videos all night long, and I couldn't understand any of the words, but just watching the videos, you could kind of see what was going on. And so, to try and sleep, that thing is just blaring at full volume all night long. Well, in the morning, we got to Laputa, and we rested there a bit and cleaned up a little, and then we went to get the boat. And we got on a boat. It was called a long-tailed boat. It was maybe 30 feet long, and it was kind of a bowed boat, and there was an engine on the back, a gas or diesel-powered engine on the back, and then there was a long shaft that went down. The propeller was on the end of a long shaft that was maybe 12, 15 feet long, and that shaft could be, they could tilt that so that it could be almost straight out behind the boat, or it could be almost straight down. And that's why it was called a long-tailed boat, because when they had that shaft straight out the back, it looked like a long tail out the back of the boat. So we got in the boat, and you go down inside. It was covered over, but it was open. There were windows on the side, but so we're going down the river and saying, like, how long is it? How long is the boat ride? And we're saying, well, it's 3 or 4 hours. So we were on the boat, and yeah, it was a nice ride, a hot day, and we're enjoying the ride. And then we got out to the ocean, and when we get out to the ocean or the bay and out of the river, the wind was from the wrong direction. So they said, well, we're going to have to go detour around so that we don't get turned crosswise in the waves, and so it's going to take us a little longer to get to the island. Well, we got out onto the ocean, and we're going over these 3, 4 foot waves with this boat, and the motor quit. And there we are now. We're just floating. We're just bobbing on the waves, no power. And well, they dug around in their toolbox, and they found some tools, and they worked on it a little bit, and there was a belt or something that tore, and they replaced that, and we were on our way. And there we are. We're going, the water's spraying in, and we're getting wet, but it was hot, so that was okay. And I kind of watched the men that were running the boat, and they never seemed stressed. They never seemed worried. So I figured, okay, well, everything's fine. They do this all the time. So eventually we got to the island. It was maybe 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and we got to the island, and this island was flat, and it was probably 8 feet above sea level, 10 feet above sea level, the whole island, and it had been devastated by Cyclone Nargis in 2008, so about 3 years before we were there, and the people there were Karen people. The ethnic group was the Karen people, and the Myanmar government doesn't have a very good track record with their relationship with ethnic groups. And so when the cyclone came through, they wouldn't allow aid agencies to bring aid into the islands. And so more people died after the storm than died in the storm. And eventually they did allow aid agencies to come in, but no one could stay there overnight. Actually, we weren't the first, but we were some of the first people to get permission to stay there overnight 3 years later. Um, Everything on the island, all the houses and everything was built on stilts. So They were bamboo houses, and they were about 6 feet, 8 feet off the ground. Even the outhouse was up on stilts. So when you went to the outhouse, you had to climb up a ladder, go into the outhouse, and then there were two boards going one way and two boards going the other way, and you had to kind of perch yourself there and be careful you didn't fall down through the floor. Um, so it was well, we were staying at the deacon's house. We got there and we had dinner. His wife made us a nice dinner, and then they said, "Well, we might have church tonight. We're not sure." And so a little later, uh, Raymond said, "Well, he's going to go to bed. He's tired." I said, "Well, I'm going to wait a little bit." They said they might have church, and we'll see if they're going to have church. So sure enough, in a half hour or so, they came and said, "Okay, we're going to church." So we got to church, and now it's about 8 o'clock in the evening, and they're starting the church service. And they were saying, "Okay, we want both of you to preach, and Stephen can have a story for the children." We were saying, "Okay, we can do that." We were saying, "How long?" And they said, "Maybe an hour." And we said, "Okay, that's 30 minutes for each of us. We can do that." And they were like, "No, an hour each." And we were like, "Yeah, but it's 8 o'clock at night." And they're like, "Well, what does that have to do with anything?" So they sang for some time, and then Stephen had a story for the children. Raymond and I each preached for an hour, and we went to bed. We were exhausted. Um, then the government had said that we weren't allowed to have a conference. And so our coordinator said, "Well, since we can't have a conference and we can't get everybody together at the church, we're not allowed to do that. What we'll do is we'll go around and we'll have services in people's houses. And we can go to somebody's house, they can invite their neighbors in, and we'll do a service that way." So they split up Raymond and I, and they gave each of us an interpreter. And so I went with my interpreter, went to the first house, and there were maybe uh, 15, 20 people there. And first of all, we ate and these people, they, they were on the ocean and they raised shrimp and crab and seafood in their backyards. Like everybody had a pond in their backyard where they were raising shrimp. And so we had fresh seafood. It was amazing. I love seafood. And so it was, oh, we ate seafood and we're going to start the service. So they start singing. And then my coordinator said to me, "Now, this man at this house, he doesn't believe that you can trust God. He thinks if you trust God, you're going to be disappointed. God's going to let you down. So here you need to preach about faith." So we sang one or two more songs, and then I had a message about faith and trusting in God. So we went to the next house. More seafood. Oh, we ate seafood. It was amazing. And then we're getting ready to have a service there. And my coordinator said, "Now, this man here, his wife's been a Christian, but he just became a Christian about 3 months ago. And he has a really bad temper. And before he was a Christian, he would beat his wife. But now that he's a Christian, he knows that he should not beat his wife. But he doesn't know what to do when he gets angry with her. So here you need to preach about Christian marriage and how a Christian husband should treat his wife." So we sang another song or two, and then I preached about Christian marriage. So that's what we did instead of having a conference. Well, then we were there for 3 or 4 days, and the last day that we were there, uh, we went to the deacon's house again for the night. The last night we were going to be there, and the they said, "We feel kind of bad. Like we've just been feeding you our ordinary food and the things that we get out of our backyards, and we felt kind of bad about not giving you anything special. So tonight we made a special meal." We said, "Oh, good. Like what are we having?" He said, "We killed a dog, and we're going to have dog." And so the deacon's wife had prepared a dog curry, and she had fried up some of the dog meat so that we could taste it without it being mixed in with all the curry and the spices. It was a dark meat, and it did not taste like chicken. It was not chicken, and it was okay. I couldn't think about a dog while I was eating it, but it was okay. And so, that was a unique experience. And then we had to go back. We had to get the boat back to the Laputa and then the bus back to Yangon. We did the whole thing again. The boat ride, the bus ride, the truck ride, the bus ride, and we got back to Yangon. And But we were able to share with the believers there on the island and encourage them in their faith. In that community that we were in before the cyclone, before Cyclone Nargis, the population was about 1,000. Afterwards, when we were there, the population was about 250. So about three-quarters of the people had died. And uh, there were a lot of partial families there. And we were able to provide some encouragement to them in, as a follow-up to their loss and the things that they had gone through.